Also a statement is Cristiano Ronaldo, who was always going to be at the centre of debate, considering the way that Roberto Martinez was going to use him throughout his tournament. We saw late on against Croatia, he didn't come off initially, Ramos came on, but he did come off in the end, and it was Ramos who scored that crucial goal. Ramos didn't play in these 90 minutes. Roberto Martinez made 5 substitutions, none of them took Cristiano Ronaldo off.
If you're Gonzalo Ramos, who's just made a move from PSG to Milan, he's just scored the winner in the round of 32 against Croatia, such an important goal, and you don't even come on the field in a game that's tight, because he thinks he's saving you for extra time, where he gets that added substitute. But you don't get to extra time, because when Moreno scores, then the game is dead and buried pretty much, and he doesn't have that substitutions. And in the biggest of moments, and we talked about this for months, about the manager of Portugal. Yeah, he took him off in that Croatia game, but this was the biggest of moments against one of the favourites for the tournament, and he's left a player on who did basically little in the game. There was no Kubasi and Aymeric Laporte. There was no threat. There was no threat from Ronaldo. The threat was going to be maybe the pace of Leao in the wider area, maybe the pace of Neto on the right-hand side. There was no threat of the pace from Cristiano Ronaldo getting in behind, but we knew that. We knew that, so it needed something different. And they'll nail him to a mast back in Portugal about this. They got to. Because it's not about Ronaldo. It's not about him playing the last World Cup. It's not about all that. It's about Portugal and the national team and this multi-talented squad of players they've got. And he made a decision, Roberto Martinez, for the individual, not for the betterment of the team. And they've paid the penalty.
That's what I regret about it. It's not a Ronaldo testimonial. That wasn't a game to please him. That was a game to go through. Yep. It was like today seeing Neymar coming on. That's like a kind of a tribute. No, that's a national team game, and you want to go through. So it's a regret. Ronaldo had some chances with the half bicycle in the first half, but it wasn't productive enough in the second half, and it would have been, I think, only fair to maybe try something with Gonzalo Ramos to bring something different. And Roberto Martinez didn't take that opportunity, and he will have to pay the price.
At the same time, though, Ronaldo was not the only underperformer in this Portugal team. We came into this World Cup saying that Portugal arguably had the best midfield of any team in the tournament. Yet you'd not seen anything from that incredibly talented midfield. While I agree, Ronaldo could have been sacrificed, in want of a better word, a whole lot sooner, a whole lot more often during the course of this tournament. You being unable to get a tune out of that midfield three, again, that is as damning a criticism on Roberto Martinez as his unwillingness to make big changes. And I'm looking at Ronaldo here.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked about this the other day, Shaq. You're looking at Vitinha, João Neves, and Bruno Fernandes, right? And I talked about this, I think, last week and previous weeks. When they're playing at their club, respectively, Man United and PSG, they have players up front in the front three, particularly through the middle, that they can just bend balls in first time, right? Without looking. We see Bruno Fernandes doing it at Man United. That ball comes into him and he whips it around the corner for Mbemo or Sesko. They don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, they've got at PSG, they've got Dembele, they've got Dewey, they've got Kvaratskhelia, they've got Barcola. They can play those balls in. They're almost taking extra touches because Ronaldo's coming short all the time. He can't go in behind, so it completely negates that threat. And Frank will tell you, as a centre-half, if you're not worried about the pace, you can squeeze the game a little bit more.
Phil, obviously you've covered Cristiano Ronaldo's career extensively in Spain, and there is a bit of a distance, isn't there, between what he's achieved both in Spain and everywhere else he's played in terms of the goals, the trophies won, the reputation, and what he's done for the national side. What do you put that down to?
Well, am I allowed to push back a bit and say, actually, he's achieved quite a lot with the national team in winning the Euros and winning the Nations League as well? Yes, all right. You know, not many teams can win the World Cup. Only one team can win it every 4 years, and Portugal haven't been able to do that. But he won the Euros with them, and they won the Nations League. And I know the Nations League isn't a major tournament, but you have to beat some pretty good teams to do that. Not least Spain in the final when they won that. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that it's been a failure or even not as successful. He's had tremendous success throughout his club career. Wherever he's gone, he's won trophies. He's won fewer international trophies because it's perhaps harder to win international trophies. But I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't say it's a failure for him not to have won the World Cup, but there is obviously in the back of his mind, I'm sure, and everybody who is a massive fan of Ronaldo, of whom there are millions all over the world, there is this obvious little asterisk in his glorious career that he hasn't won the World Cup, and he's not going to win the World Cup. And in his last World Cup, I think it was patently obvious to everyone that he once was one of the best players of the world and maybe of all time. He is not anymore, and he hasn't been for a few years now. I remember being at the Euros 2 years ago, being in the stadium. I think I covered every single Portugal game thinking, what's going on? You know, why is he still starting? Surely he can't be starting. And here he is 2 years later, still starting. He scored 3 goals, which he seems to think in the pre-match press conference to the Spain game, he was quite bigging himself up, saying, you know, it's not that bad. It's pretty good, isn't it? You know, I haven't done that bad. 3 goals at the World Cup. But I think everybody who is entirely objective on this matter will objectively look at this and think, yeah, you know, you're no longer the great, extraordinary player that you once were.
Phil, there's a moment in every aging player or athlete's career where you're a little bit delusional, where you think you can still do it, but your body can't. And normally your mind is 3 years behind your body. Like you keep going, oh, I can still. So when you talk to those bits about Ronaldo, are you laying the blame at his feet or at the manager's feet for keep playing him?
Well, he will want to keep playing, won't he? You know, there are very few players that know exactly the right time to go out. I can think of a couple off the top of my head, and they're Toni Kroos and Zinedine Zidane, who went out at the peak of their powers. That was the right time to go out. But obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's gone to Saudi and he's scored more goals, and I think he's won some trophies there. And, you know, they did win the Nations League with Portugal recently as well. So you can make an argument. You can use statistics and trophies and goals to make an argument to suggest that actually he is still good enough to keep going. It's just that when you compare him to what he was previously, he's so miles away from that now that it's difficult, I think, to sustain that argument. And obviously there's been a lot of criticism of Roberto Martinez for playing him basically every game, all game, every game, you know, hardly taking him off, and him being plan A and plan B and C as well. It's hard to overstate the sort of cultural significance Cristiano Ronaldo has in Portugal as not just the most famous Portuguese person in the world, but just sort of, you know, a socio-cultural ambassador for this small country around the world. But I think, you know, someone should have realised it's time that he's not starting every single game for us. And maybe that someone should have been Ronaldo. Maybe someone could have sat him down and said, listen, man, you can be so useful for us. Last 10, 15, 20 minutes, you can win the game for us. You can be the match winner for us, but we're not going to start you every game. Maybe that conversation
Phil, you stumbled onto,
yeah.
I should have said it was a leading question, but you stumbled onto my next part. You say that, sit him down, take him to one side, time to be on the bench.
Yeah.
Do you see what happened when you took him off in the last game? Did you see the faces he was pulling?
Done, right?
So,
yeah.
Again, this is part of the... I hate this part because ultimately when players come to the end, great players come to the end, it's always they're not as good as they once were. But we kind of take away how great he once was. But the big part with Ronaldo is he has a massive ego, which you need, but you cannot say that he has helped this team in this World Cup alone. And that part there for the manager to take him out is a massive distraction. It's a massive talking point if he's on the bench because Messi's doing so well for Argentina. All of the narrative around it. So I actually think they were damned if they do, damned if they don't. But I think in this situation, Ronaldo is to blame as well because he makes it so hard to drop him.
Of course, we've all been on a little bit of Ronaldo watch and working out where he could be most effective. I'll give you his numbers. No chances created, no dribbles, 2 shots on targets, but just 12 touches. And actually, we were going to have a look, and we will do that in a second, at the great Simon moment, a save, a rather dramatic but very good save. But actually, you asked to pull it back a little bit because you've seen where Portugal perhaps could get Ronaldo in a bit more.
Yeah, I don't think we'd expect him to have, 100 touches a game. We know what his game is. His game has been in the box. But if you look at him here, if you're playing Cristiano Ronaldo, you have to use him. And still, one of his big strengths is heading the ball and being in the box and being in the middle of the goal. And here, I think the ball could have went into the box there, where he's 1v1. It could go into the box here from Bruno. But they refused to put it in. So I think if you're playing him, you have to use him. Because this is still a big threat. This and set pieces is still he's still a massive threat for Portugal. The ball comes in the box, and now this is just instinctive. He does really well to get the connection and get the ball going back towards the goal. So he's unlucky here. But I just think for Portugal, if Ronaldo's playing, you have to play to his strength, and his strength is not giving him the ball 30 yards from goal anymore. It's getting it into the penalty area where he can still be effective, and I think they can do it a little bit earlier, which will give him a better chance of scoring.
I can just hear Joe Hart saying Hollywood save, because it looks so incredible, doesn't it? And that extends his World Cup run of not conceding to 564 minutes.
Amazing. Hopefully
Incredible.
it keeps going.
Yeah, well, he'll be hoping so, but became very close there, didn't he, to actually concede. Both goalkeepers actually have had their moments.
Yeah, they had their moments, and just adding to Wayne's point about Cristiano and the crosses, I think it will help him if they have more bodies in the box.
Yeah.
Like the one you mentioned, Bruno was on the ball, but just was himself in the box. And as soon as Joao Felix came a bit to occupy the second post, then I think he has more chances. So,
but I think that comes from Portugal imposing themselves a little bit more and having more possession in Spain's half, more control of the game. If they do that, it allows players to get a little bit close to him, and then the runs into the penalty box are not as big. At the minute, with Spain having a bit more possession, Portugal are trying to get there a bit in a rush, and then the run for the midfield players or the wide players to get in the box and support him is a little bit longer, so it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Mendes arguably with their best chance.
Yeah, and I think it was, a brilliant chance for them. And I think, it was a brilliant corner, a great kind of inventive one, obviously from the training pitch. And he's got an unbelievable strike on it. He's already done about 2 or 3 crossfield passes to Cancelo, but it's a slight, obviously, deflection, but it's a wonderful strike. And I'm sure that crossbar's probably still rattling now, to be honest. But yeah, they are creating. And I think those wide areas are really important for him. And obviously they could make changes in the second. Leao was brilliant in the previous game, and something different, and he loves to cross the ball. He done a wonderful cross for Ramos's goal, so maybe something different to mix it up in the second half as well.